Welcome everybody to part 2 of this podcast, which is for the Formula 1000 Junior British Championship regulations. And this part is the technical regulations. I'm Kevin Ferber. I've got a son, Zach, competing in the 2024 championship. I'm going to go through the technical regulations with...
And I'm Tony Dillon, and I'm the coordinator for the championship and one of the committee members of the Formula 1000 Rally Club.
So Tony knows what he's talking about. This is not meant to be absolutely exact as far as the technical regulations are concerned. You will have to read the bulletins, but we're going to try in a couple of minutes to give you a quick overview of what's needed on a personal level for your safety equipment. As far as a car is concerned, if you're looking to buy one from scratch and build one, give you a quick overview of that. Maybe you've never built a rally car before, so you need to know the basics. Maybe you're going to go and buy a car. If you're buying a car, the things that you need to look out for that are in date that need to be in your car. Also, a quick overview of what you are allowed to do to make your car perform to the best of its advantage without cheating, because there are some regulations that stop you from gaining too much performance, because it is in effect a control championship to keep the budgets down and keep everything fair as far as the competitors are concerned. Right, let's really quickly, Tony, we're going to go through safety. I'm going to roll through my list in front of me and you let me know what the basics are. We're going to start with, if you're building a car from scratch and we're covering the safety issues, the car must have a roll cage. What's that?
Roll cage is a tubular steel frame that fits within the cabin of the car and is secured to the floor and suspension pickup points that in the event of the car effectively rolling over, first of all stops the roof compressing down and safeguarding the crew inside, and also it has side impact bars that hopefully would stop any encroachment if you were in a side impact.
And there are a lot of technical regulations, so that you buy these things, you don't make them. You can fit them, but some welding is not necessarily essential, but the basics to help it bolt to the chassis of the car, you do need to have welding.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the roll cages are buyable from various motorsport suppliers. They have to be of a specific thickness of tube, so it's not something you can sort of make yourself out of scaffolding pipes or whatever. Majority of the cages can, what they call, be bolted in, but you do need to have some welding skill to put the reinforcing points in for where you would bolt the cage to.
Right, and on that point as well, you also need professional seat fitting points up to current MSA, Motorsport Association regulations, to be able to fit competition seats. So again, there's welding involved in that process.
Indeed, yeah, you can't use the standard seat mountings, which are generally just into the soft steel of the floor of the car. It generally means welding 2 bars across between effectively the transmission tunnel and the internal sill of the car to actually mount your seats to, because so the seats are fixed and rigid.
Talking of seats, you need competition seats. Those seats need to have a FIFA approval sticker on it, and they need to be in date. Again, you need to read the technical regulations of the British Motorsports governing body, the MSA, to know exactly what we're talking about there, but they need to be in date. And these seats now, competition seats, are dated. If you're buying brand new ones, it won't be a problem, but if you're buying second-hand ones, you need to make sure they're in date.
Yeah, indeed. If you're buying a second-hand seats or indeed a second-hand car, just look at the shelf life, if you like, of the seats and also the belts, because the safety belts are also dated.
Yeah, most second-hand cars will come with seats and belts. It's as easy as being able to look on the branded stickers. They'll give you a date. As it happens, because of COVID, if it says 2022 on the expiry date, you've got 2 years leniency, and therefore you can use seats at least until 2 extra years.
Yeah, but all that they will find detailed in the Motorsport UK regulations in what we call the Blue Book, and all that information is available online from Motorsport UK.
Yeah. Next one is fire extinguishers. You need to fit a fire extinguisher system, and one is handheld, which means you can take it out of a bracket, hold it and put a fire out. The other one's actually installed inside the car, and that one very basically needs to be plumbed in to the point where it can be operated from outside the car by a marshal, or inside the car from the driver's seat by pulling of a lever or mechanically pressing a button, and the fire extinguisher goes off, and the fire extinguisher itself has to dispense its liquid under the bonnet, so there has to be a pipe going under there and inside the car. Again, you need to look at technical regs, but that's the basics of it, and that needs to be in date.
that again needs to be in date and serviced according to the regulations in the Blue Book. Yeah.
Good point. They need to be currently serviced. So if you're buying a second-hand car, they have to be in date, and you need to check the technical regs, but the date will be on it. If it's out of date, it's out of date, it needs a service. Safety glass.
There's a film that has to be applied to the internals of the glass, with the exception of the windscreen. The idea of that is that in the event of an impact, it stops the glass shattering into a million pieces. It still does it, but it's held in place by the film. So that is just to stop loads of glass showering in. Doesn't involve with windscreens, because windscreens have to be laminated, as any modern car windscreen is, so you're not going to get the same type of breakage on a windscreen.
Great. So safety covering for glass, let's call it. We have to have lines inside the car. So a fuel line of a car can't go underneath. So that's one of the basic requirements, that it needs to run inside the car and therefore be protected. In actual fact, it can be under the car, but you'd have to box it in. You can't have a fuel line that's exposed to the elements outside. Also, I couldn't read my own writing there, something called a life hammer. I'm not sure what that is.
A life hammer is, I'm not sure if it's a regulation you have to carry, but it's always worth it. It's a 2-point thing, that if you've ever tried to break a car window by hitting it with a hammer, it just bounces off and the hammer flies across the field. A life hammer is a small implement, and it's got a really, really sharp point on it. So if you did need to break a window to escape or get in, then you just tap the glass and it will shatter. Also in there is a sharp blade which is concealed within the plastic of the handle that would enable you to cut a belt. So if somebody's belts couldn't get undone for some reason, it will enable you to slash the belt to get them out of the car.
Brilliant. Okay, and also inside the car we need I can't remember the full specification, but a blanket to mop up oil.
Oh, an oil spill kit.
That's it.
Oil spill kit, which is there, in case, if you had an incident where the car was leaking oil, you need to be able to deal with that from an environmental point of view, which is very, very important. You also need to carry a basic first aid kit, and also a red warning triangle. And all these are relevant to any competition car. It's not just to the juniors or anything like that. This is, every rally car has to have this sort of level of equipment.
And I don't know if I mentioned before, a cut-off switch, which means the car has got to be able to be wired in a way which, from outside, a marshal on a designated area would be able to turn a switch and kill the car's engine. So stop the car.
Kill the engine and the electrics completely to the car. So once that is activated, there should be nothing live on the car, even side lights, everything. But immediately, priority is to cut the engine.
Right. And then a final one I can think of is that you need a tow bar or a tow hook at the front and at the rear of the car. So if your car breaks down on a stage, the marshals again can hook up and move your car.
Yeah. That needs to be something that's on there. It can be a strap or a hook or a towing eye, but it needs to be clearly labelled on the car where it is, so that again, recovery crews or marshals can gain access to it quickly and get you out of the way.
Brilliant. That's the vehicle's safety more or less done. And then personal safety, we do this really quick because it is covered in our other videos. The very first starting point, correct me if I'm wrong, but you need a club card, so you need to have joined the club, which is the Junior 1000cc, or formerly 1000 British Junior.
Formerly 1000 Rally Club, yeah.
That's the one. And you'll get a club number when you do that. You also need a championship entry number, and therefore you have to pay an entry fee to join the championship itself, which is done with yourself on it. Then some personal things. You need to be taller than 1.4 metres high. You must be 14 years old. Yes. So you can't compete before you're 14. No. Your 14th birthday.
You can start on your 14th birthday, but if you've done, because you can actually do your bars course and everything prior to being 14.
Do you?
Yeah, that is possible to do. I'm fairly sure it is. I've said that, but I'm pretty sure you can do your bars course before your 14th birthday.
Well, you could definitely do training at a rally school.
You can.
Because there's no restriction to that. If you're competent, the rally school is willing to take you, then you can negotiate your own deal.
Yeah. I mean, Motorsport UK will not issue your licence until you're 14. Yes. It will not be issued until you're 14, but I'm pretty sure you can do your bars course in a time span up to it.
Yeah. Makes sense. So you have to be 14. And I guess the big thing there is if you were 14 halfway through a year, could you join the championship halfway through the year?
Oh, yeah, immediately. As soon as you're 14, you can join the championship.
Yeah. So the championship itself starts at the beginning of the year, January to December.
Yeah, I mean, this year we started in February. Normally we start in March. I've got to be perfectly honest. This year we've had the ability to go to an event we've not been to before, so we are starting at the beginning of February.
Yeah, but you could start even in December if that's the way that your birthday falls. But you're not allowed to compete whilst you're 18, so you can compete at 17 and 11 months.
Indeed, you can compete until the end of the year of your 17th birthday.
Could you be 18?
No, because, no, you can't, can you? Because if you're 17 on the 1st of January, then it would end 31st of December. That would be your last year. So I don't think it would work, would it? No, because if
it might not.
It's the end of the year. You can compete to the 31st of December of the year you're 17.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's confusing. Is that what I think about myself?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you run out of time.
Yeah.
17. You need a MSA competition license, Motorsport Association. UK, you need a competition license which is linked to the bars test. So you have to, first of all, pass your beginner's drive. Well, first of all, you have to apply for a pack from the MSA which gives you information and the basics you need to then go to a rally school. You go to a rally school, you do some tuition, you pass your very basic bars test so you become a rally driver, and then you get a full competition license. And that's that process done. But you need a license in your hand before you can compete.
Yeah, what you said there in the end, Kev, they never actually hold their license. Any junior formula, whether it's rally and racing, they're always held by the coordinator. And the reason for that was initially it didn't say junior on the license, I think, so somebody could have rocked up and done a senior event. So you never actually hold your actual license.
Okay. Those licenses are endorsable. I doubt whether that's ever happened, but potentially if the drivers misbehave, a clerk of course can write down that they've misbehaved, and there are potential punishments for poor driver standards.
Penalties, but it's never happened with the juniors.
No, and it usually is extreme situations.
It is. We have seen it. You've seen it. I've certainly seen it.
Yeah. In seniors, not juniors. Okay, then. Personal safety equipment that's required. We need a crash helmet appropriate to the correct regulations. Inside that, you'll need an intercom system and intercom to the car.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, the modern crash helmets are so all-encapsulating, but without that, you're not going to be able to talk to your co-driver. So, yeah, a good intercom is always a necessity.
There's rules and regulations about what type of helmet is allowed. Again, it is dated, so if you're buying a second-hand one, you need to check what those current rules are.
Indeed.
And hands device, which is a neck brace to help for extreme situations, and that needs to fasten to your helmet. So you need to make sure that your helmet is compliant to hands device. You need boots, gloves. You need a race suit that's again in date. It'd be very rare for it to be out of date, but.
I think they go on quite a long time, the race suits. I know I've still got some of my original ones. So, but yes, that is something that we also require. And
a balaclava is needed, and that brings us more or less to the end of what you would need to make yourself legally able to be a driver in the championship.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an awful lot of stuff, and it is an awful lot of stuff. But particularly if you're buying a car, you're probably going to find that all this stuff is already in there. But this is all items that will be checked by the scrutineers at the start of any event, the Motorsport UK scrutineers, and that is what you have to comply with from their point of view.
Yeah, as you said, this does get really a massive amount easier when you've first time you ever do it. It's a big deal. It's not that big a deal once you've got it.
It sounds worse than it is.
Yeah, by far. Right, now to the almost exciting part. If you're preparing a car, you've done the safety equipment that we've talked about, or now maybe you've gone out there and you're looking for a second-hand car. There's the next element of it, which is performance-based. All the basic safety stuff is there. Let's say you've built your own car, or you're thinking of building your own car. You've made a good plan. You know the safety equipment's got to be done. You're capable of doing that. Now, what can you actually do to a car to make it perform any better or be stronger, or what's actually needed? So I'm going to go to the basics to run through it. The first thing to say probably is that the elements that are controlled, and the main one for us is tyres. If the tyres were free, you could spend an awful lot of money on a soft compound tyre and rip it up in just a few miles and then need some more. So the first thing the Championship's offering is a control tyre. Therefore, everybody has to use the same tyre. Therefore, we're equal from the start.
Yep.
Tell us a bit about the tyre.
Okay, the tyre that we're currently using is the Toyo R888R, which we started using at the beginning of 2023. Been very, very well received by everybody. Great tyre. Very, very good longevity in the tyre. Seems to work on all surfaces, all conditions, because there is no wet option. It is simply, that is the control tyre. You're not allowed to cut the tyres. It is the same for everybody. It's that tyre. It all has to be bought from the same source, and that is the way that we control the tyre.
Are they all the same size?
No, with two sizes, and depending on what the car is. The early cars, so your Micras and your C1s and derivatives up to December 2013 run 13-inch wheels. The Ups, City Goes and any C1s, 108s or I Goes after 2014 run 14-inch wheels. But they are still on 185/60 tyres, either 13 or 14.
And when you go 14, could you use a 13-inch wheel on a car that is technically produced on a 14?
No. The reason for that is that when we look at the gearing, that a lot of the modern cars, a classic one is a very, very easy way to make a C1 go blisteringly quick is to put a Yaris crown wheel and pinion in it, because the gearing drops and it's so obvious that you would never do it because it is blatantly obvious. But it would be the same or similar if we put allowed a 13-inch wheel to run on a car that is geared by the manufacturer for a 14-inch wheel. So that is why we say that they have to be the same as they are manufactured.
So talking about wheels, are wheels free? Do you have to use the manufacturer's own?
No, wheels are free, aftermarket, competition wheels, whatever. The only thing with wheels is that you can't modify a wheel. So you can't machine a wheel down to lighten it, because obviously that reduces the rolling mass of the car, increases performance, but also there is a safety aspect. The only thing you're allowed to do with a wheel is to machine the central spigot out so it fitted snugly over the hub. And other than that, they have to be compliant with the manufacturer's specifications, should I say, as to weights and dimensions.
There are specialist companies that do rally wheels and a bit stronger, so
Absolutely.
As well as lightweight, you're actually needing to look at strength from a wheel.
Yeah.
A standard wheel would probably be too flimsy.
Probably too flimsy, or even manufacturers' alloys, but you're talking about people like Compomotive, Speedline, and whatever these people still exist, but they are there, and believe it or not as expensive as people might think.
Okay, what about body panels?
Basically, body panels, the profile of the car has to remain as manufacturer. So you can't widen the wheel arches, you can't put bonnet vents in, you can't do anything like that. If you fit any type of sort of spoiler, rear spoiler, it has to be something that was fitted by the manufacturer. So you can't turn up with a Halford's special or something like that. And it's basically to just keep the cars looking as standard as possible.
Cool. And you covered another point there. Can you put a spacer on a wheel?
You can put a spacer on a wheel, but again, that is what is governed by the Motorsport UK regulations, and I think, from memory, I think it's 10 mil that you're allowed to put a spacer on a wheel. So that again is in the general regulations.
And I guess at some point, actually, because you're on the constraints of a standard car, you wouldn't get a wheel under the arch.
No, but people do run spacers on some because of the type of wheel that they've actually used. Maybe the offset or the inset is slightly different to the standard wheel, and they do actually use spacers on some of the cars.
Brakes and brake discs and pads.
Brake discs really should be standard. You can upgrade. I mean, on a lot of the Micras, they used to put Nissan 100 NX front discs on because they were vented. And that is allowed within the regulations as long as it is from that manufacturer. But you can't start putting AP 4-pot calipers on, it'd probably trip over itself in a light car with something like that. But brake linings are free. Material, pads, shoes, the linings are actually free.
So competition brake pads. Now the serious big elements, the engine. From the car's engine point of view, what can we do?
Nothing. The engines have to be standard. That is the crux of it. There are certain things external to the engine, which we'll come to in a minute, but the engine itself and indeed the gearbox have to be from a standard car of that model.
Okay, that's quite clear cut. Big things that control the engine. What about the fuel injectors, air intake, and ECU? Again,
fuel injectors have to be standard. Throttle bodies, which controls the airflow into the engine, they've got to be at the correct dimensions for that make and model of car. Airboxes are free, so the air intake into the car, as long as it's not driven in any way, so you can put a Group A airbox on, as they're classified for the Micras. So that is free, and people dream up all sorts of ways of doing that. The ECU is not allowed to be modified, other than to take out things such as ABS and or traction control, which can be disabled from the ECU. But other than that, from a performance issue, no remapping, no piggyback ECUs, nothing like that. Has to be standard.
And how do you control that?
That's controlled by, again, at the start of the year, there is a sticker put on the ECU from the start of that year. At any time, we can take that ECU and have it checked by our nominated company that check the ECUs, and they would look at it against the standard map there, and they say, yeah, it either complies or it doesn't. If it doesn't comply, the competitor would lose any points it gained up to the date that the seal was applied. So basically, if they found out at the end of the season to have a dodgy ECU, it would go right back to day one if it hadn't been checked in the interim period.
And then something on that about the last round of the championship, which is part of the regulations, I guess, really. You were saying that you have to do the last round?
Yes, the last round of the championship is a mandatory round. Your score from that championship will count as one of your 6 for the championship. And really, it's to maintain competition right up to the end of the year. What we don't want to see is somebody who wins a championship in July and then we don't see them again. And it just adds really a little bit of probably tension, I suppose, a bit of theatre to the end of the year, and it gets everybody together for one final time.
And then the good part of that is anything that's restricted or sealed, you have to be doing the very last round.
Indeed.
So,
Indeed.
Yeah, you've got a lot at stake if anybody's thinking of cheating.
Indeed.
Exhaust.
Exhaust is free from... I've got to get this right. It's free. The exhaust manifold has to remain the standard exhaust manifold for the car. So you can't take a cast manifold off and put a steel branch manifold on. That has to be right. But the exhaust from the exit of the exhaust manifold is free. So you can put a modified exhaust on as long as it complies with the noise data or the decibels that are permitted for the event.
And I believe the current regulations say that you have to have a catalytic converter as part of your exhaust system.
Yes.
As well. So
They do.
basically, most people will have a standard exhaust.
No, they don't, in all fairness, believe it or not. Strangely, most people have got a modified exhaust because getting air in and out of the car is a really good way to increase performance, although it's not going to be dramatic, but every little helps. So there has to be a cat on it, but it can be relocated from the manufacturer's original position. But if the car has to have a cat from new, it has to have one.
Okay. Air intake we've covered. The weight of the car.
Yeah, the weight of the car is controlled. There is a minimum weight for each model of car, which has to be complied with at all times. That is including the crew and all their safety equipment, the sandwiches or whatever else they carry in the car. But there is a specific minimum weight for each car, which is detailed in the regs. Yeah,
and a big part of that, which brings us to, if you wanted to do something that's very labour intensive, you can lighten the car. Mm-hmm. So you could take out every internal panel. You're obviously taking out the seats, the rear seats, the carpets. You can take away the door cards. You can strip the car completely back to bare metal if you wanted to. So anything that has weight inside the car, you can take out.
You can take anything that adds weight. You can't start cutting panels away. So you can't start cutting reinforcement away from sort of the rear quarter panels or anything like that. The door bars that are fitted in by manufacturers these days from a safety point of view have to be retained. So the crash bars in the doors have to be retained, even though you've got side impact bars in your roll cage. But you can take off little brackets and things like that may have been for fastening seats or whatever. But the main frame of the car must remain intact without any holes drilled in it for lightning or anything like that.
Brilliant. So there we have it, a quick summary of the technical regulations for the championship. You can see in what we've just been talking about, the championship's trying to be as fair as it can. There's no other reason to control things other than to keep you safe when you're in the car. and to make the competition as fair as it can. And probably behind it all as well, to keep the costs down, so to make sure it's a budget championship, and it is a really friendly championship. It's just for juniors. It starts out as kids. They may be going towards being young men by the time they're leaving the championship, but all in all, it's the spirit of the championship that's really important, and I don't think anybody wants to cross that bridge. So even though there are one or two things there where you might think, if you're an engineer, I'm interested in, trying to fine tune it. What I would say is 99% of people will be on the other side thinking, I don't want to do any more work than I need to, and they'll probably be reassured with that conversation that everything's regulated, that everything's really easy to understand if you've a bit of mechanical knowledge, and if you haven't, you've probably bought a second-hand car. And what I would say is the championship coordinator is going to be certainly at your first events. You have to pass scrutineering. There's going to be an MSA dedicated championship scrutineer at all of the events, so they will see and guide you, and if needed, implement. I was going to say punishments, but advice where needed. So you shouldn't go too far wrong. Hopefully that's a good overview for everybody. Like to finish on anything, Tony?
Well, no, I think that's it. I mean, thank you, Kevin, for your time. Thank you for taking the time to give us the opportunity to put this out here, because I think it's very, very important that it's easy for people to find the information if they know where to look. But all the regulations are in detail. They will be on our website as soon as they've been approved by Motorsport UK, which hopefully in the next couple of days. But if anybody should want a copy of them, please just get in touch.
Part 3 of this podcast will be around somewhere. Go and search that if you want to find out how to fine-tune your driving skills. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.